Dr. Sarah Chen had made peace with her unusual career trajectory. When she'd signed up for xenobiology research, she'd imagined sterile laboratories and microscope work, not becoming an accidental daycare provider for the galaxy's most feared apex predators. The Krath were legends whispered across 1,000 worlds. 8 feet of corded muscle, 4 eyes that could track prey in complete darkness, retractable claws that could shred starship hull plating, and a hunting instinct so refined that entire species had evolved specifically to avoid their territories. Their homeworld, Krathzul, was classified as a Level 9 death world, a rating so extreme that only 3 other planets in known space shared the designation. Humans came from Earth, a Level 8. That single-point difference had proven more significant than anyone anticipated. Sarah had arrived on Krathzul 6 months ago as part of the Galactic Council's cultural exchange program. The Krath, having recently achieved faster-than-light travel, were eager to establish themselves among the spacefaring civilizations. Most species had responded with thinly veiled terror. The Krath's reputation preceded them. Wars fought with savage efficiency, prey animals hunted to extinction on dozens of worlds, and a cultural obsession with the concept of worthy adversaries. But humans? Humans had looked at the Krath and seen something different. "They're just big cats," Sarah's colleague Marcus had said during orientation, and he wasn't entirely wrong. The Krath moved like cats, groomed like cats, and as Sarah discovered within her first week, played like cats. They also formed complex social hierarchies, raised their young communally, and possessed an emotional depth that most species had never bothered to investigate. Sarah's breakthrough came accidentally. She'd been observing a Krath hunting pack when one of the cubs, barely 3 months old but already the size of an adult human, had approached her with curious chirping sounds. Without thinking, Sarah had done what any human might do when faced with a kitten. She'd scratched behind its auditory organs. The cub had practically melted. Within a week, she'd become the most popular human on Krathzul. Within a month, she'd been officially designated as the primary xenobiological liaison. Within 3 months, she'd somehow become the preferred caretaker for cubs whose parents were on hunting expeditions, which brought her to today. Sarah had been cataloging plant samples in the communal den, a massive underground cavern system where multiple Krath families lived in close proximity. The work was tedious, the artificial lighting gave her headaches, and she'd been awake for nearly 16 hours. When she'd spotted a patch of soft moss near the den's warming stones, the temptation had been too great. Just 5 minutes, she'd told herself. Just a quick rest. She'd awakened to the sensation of weight, substantial, purring weight, settling across her body. The first cub had been Kirsch, the adventurous 3-month-old who'd first discovered that humans gave excellent scratches. He'd apparently noticed Sarah sleeping and decided she looked comfortable. At roughly 80 pounds of dense muscle and developing bone plating, he'd effectively pinned her legs. Then Kirsch's littermate, Thra, had noticed. Where one cub went, the other followed. Thra had draped herself across Sarah's midsection, her developing claws carefully retracted, purring with the resonance of a small engine. The domino effect had been inevitable. Within minutes, 7 cubs, ranging from 8 weeks to 5 months old, had piled onto the sleeping human. They'd arranged themselves with the casual efficiency of creatures who'd been sleeping in piles since birth. Younger cubs nestled in the warm spaces created by their older siblings, tails wrapped around each other, all of them purring in synchronous contentment. Sarah had opened her eyes to find herself completely immobilized beneath approximately 600 pounds of predator cubs. "Oh," she'd said quietly. "Well, this is my life now." She couldn't reach her communicator, couldn't move her arms beyond the elbows, couldn't even sit up without disturbing the carefully constructed pyramid of sleeping death machines, currently using her as a foundation. The logical response would have been panic. The Krath, after all, could kill her without effort. Their claws were already sharp enough to pierce flesh, their bite strength sufficient to crack bone, their instincts honed by millions of years of evolution at the top of a brutal food chain. But Sarah had spent 6 months observing these creatures. She'd watched them play fight with a gentleness that belied their fearsome appearance. She'd seen them bring food to injured pack members and mourn their dead with haunting vocalizations. She'd documented their capacity for abstract thought, artistic expression, and, most surprisingly, interspecies empathy. Besides, they were warm, and their purring was surprisingly soothing. So Sarah did what any reasonable xenobiologist would do. She relaxed and waited. 2 hours later, Matriarch Krethka entered the communal den and froze. The matriarch stood 9 feet tall, scarred from countless hunts, and commanded absolute respect from her clan. She'd initially been skeptical of the human presence. Humans were small, weak, and lacked any obvious survival adaptations. But she'd watched Sarah interact with the cubs, had observed the humans' fearlessness in the face of creatures that outweighed her 5-to-1, and had begun to understand something profound. Humans weren't prey. They simply didn't comprehend that they should be. "Dr. Chen?" Krethka rumbled in carefully practiced standard. "The cubs have trapped you." "Yeah," Sarah replied, unable to gesture with her pinned arms. "We've established a situation here." The matriarch's 4 eyes blinked in the sequence that indicated amusement. She approached slowly, her massive frame moving with liquid grace. With careful precision, she began extracting cubs one by one, each youngster mewing in protest before curling up in nearby moss. When Sarah was finally free, she sat up slowly, her joints protesting. "I apologize," Krethka said. "The young ones do not yet understand their strength." Sarah stretched, vertebrae popping. "Actually, they were remarkably gentle. Not a single scratch," she smiled. "They just wanted comfort, warmth. Same as any kid." Krethka's auditory organs flicked forward, a gesture of respect. "This is why we invited humans to Krathzul, Dr. Chen. Other species see us and know only fear, but you see us and recognize kinship." Sarah looked at the pile of sleeping cubs, now rearranged without their human foundation but still touching, still together. "Well," she said, "you're not so different from us. We're both apex predators from death worlds. We both value family, loyalty, strength. We both know what it means to be underestimated." "Indeed." Krethka settled into a resting position. "The Galactic Council believes humanity is naive, reckless. They think you do not understand danger." "Oh, we understand it," Sarah said, moving to resume her plant cataloging. "We just don't let it stop us." The matriarch's rumbling purr filled the cavern. "Yes. This is why I think Krath and humans will be excellent allies." As Sarah returned to her work, she noticed Krish had awakened. The cub was watching her with luminous eyes, tail swishing contentedly. Then he stood, stretched with that particularly feline arch of the back, and padded over to settle beside her, his warm bulk pressed against her leg. Sarah scratched behind his auditory organs, and he purred. Somewhere in the vastness of the galaxy, politicians and diplomats negotiated treaties and trade agreements. They debated humanity's place among the stars, questioned their judgment, feared their reckless courage, but here, in a den on a death world, a human sat surrounded by the galaxy's most feared predators, and neither species could quite remember why anyone would ever be afraid of the other. Sometimes, Sarah thought, the most powerful alliances weren't forged through treaties. Sometimes, they were built one nap at a time,